Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma, and wow, what a weekend that we had, or maybe didn't have, with a lack of having a Hall of Fame game this year due to what they called poor field conditions. I am just as shocked and surprised as anyone, but I'm not surprised about the stance from the league, its players, the teams, those involved with the Pro Football Hall of Fame and calling off this game for field condition reasons, citing player safety because player safety is paramount. For those of you who have listened to the show for a while and have listened to me, know that I have spoken about being an official in a different sport. Yes, we do play on a field, and a lot of times we play on football fields depending on the facilities available at the various levels of the game that I have been involved in, including professional and collegiate soccer. Yes, soccer, it's not the same thing as football. A lot of people think, okay, you're nuts, Joe. I'm going to just shut you off now. But give me 1 second here, because there are some parallels here, because the soccer players will play in any environment other than lightning, much like your football players. Now, of course, they try to avoid the winter seasons when it's snowing and there's ice out, but I've actually been out there in those conditions as well, and the ball just doesn't travel very good on that surface. But just the thought of them replacing the surface, replacing the turf in Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, in fact, the whole thing getting a total facelift for 2016, and the NFL being unable to showcase this game, this facility for this specific day is just it. A lot of people are saying shame on the NFL. I don't say shame on the NFL. I totally understand where they're coming from. If you have a poor field, a poor playing surface, and player safety is at risk, player safety is paramount. I don't care if you're dealing with youth players, amateur players, which are your maybe late teens, or adult players, 18 and plus would probably be considered an amateur, or even your collegiate, professional, and even scholastic or interscholastic, whatever you want to call it, your high school players. If you have dangerous field conditions, only fools will really force the issue, because if you've already got that gut feeling and you have doubts in your mind and then something happens, this is where lawsuits are born out of. This is where people suffer major injuries. You look at Sean Sweesham last year, and what happened with Sean Sweesham, and just kind of his career ending as a kicker because you had a fifth preseason game. A lot of people were questioning whether all these preseason games were even necessary. So, of course, someone is responsible for a poor paint job, whatever be the case. I'm not exactly sure even why they needed to repaint this surface. Maybe the lines or whatever got a little faded, because this field turf stuff, if you've never seen it, it's like the recycled ground tires and these little pellets, and if you ever run around on it, they get stuck in your shoes, almost kind of like if you're running on the beach with sand, except almost like it's not quite a rock, but it'll rub, and they get annoying. And they could also be kind of like this charcoal type deal, and they leave like black, like I don't know. They just get your shoes dirty. They could get like different things dirty, but a lot of people prefer playing on that. Of course, if you've ever been anyone that knows the old AstroTurf type surface that was like playing on a parking lot. And if you fell on that and you scraped like an elbow or a knee, oh my God, it would burn like crazy. If you were in the shower afterward, it was awful. And you used to see players wear different sorts of padding and tape, and it didn't matter what sport they played. It was just awful. I mean, you saw it on baseball players or anything. When you slide on this stuff, it was terrible, and people would get hurt. So this was a lot more soft type of surface. It's meant to be, they call it field turf because it's meant to be more like an artificial surface that's more realistic, more close to grass. And in a lot of these fields, they actually just get the colored turf, and they stitch it into the field, including some of the logos and the end zone. So I didn't quite understand unless they change that Pro Football. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I don't understand why they would ever need to remove the logos from the end zone or the 50-yard line. Maybe somebody knows something that I do not. This is just my outside perspective of thinking about, well, a college is just going to leave their mascot there, or a high school is just going to leave their mascot there at midfield, and they're just not, or they have a letter or something if it's the community or whatever their thing is. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about. Everybody uses like some variation of the G, like the Green Bay Packers, or maybe they have an actual like mascot, like a blue devil or a red devil or something like that. So I don't get why this was an issue that they had to paint it or do whatever with it when it was supposed to be brand new. If you saw the pictures, a lot of people were like, well, everybody was sitting on this field the night before. But no, they were, but they weren't. They have these like portable, like, it almost reminds you of like the laminate flooring like they use in the kitchen, except it's plastic and it clicks together and it creates this artificial flooring that they put down in front of the stage, so nobody's actually walking on the football field. And I mean, it is putting pressure down on that artificial surface, but they had that down for the Hall of Fame ceremony, I'm pretty sure, and I wasn't there to tell you to know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they would have had that down for the concert and any event that's like that. They don't want people on the actual field to screw with this surface. So just kind of unfortunate and weird, though, that this paint gets put down, whatever it may be, just to brighten up the lines, make it more presentable for TV, and or maybe it's just that these plastic things were on there, and with the heat and whatnot, or the pounding it took, maybe it did just screw up the paint, and it became like this tar they were saying, and they were trying to put more of these rubber pellets out there too, and I think one of the problems is you can't have a whole lot of those pellets. If you ever see them in like a certain area, you could see it eventually becomes like a banana peel. It's very weird. You would almost have to run on it to see what I'm talking about, because if you have a congestion of those in one concentration, I think is the word I'm looking for, in one specific area, you could easily slip and slide on that too. And we saw how easy that Swedesham just tore up his knee. So when you're thinking about players sliding and whatnot, there's contact, there's quick, sharp stops and cuts and things of that nature that if you don't have your footing, whether it's slick or whether it's something that traps your foot, neither one of those is a good deal. So the player safety obviously paramount here. I could understand in both aspects how if it's either too slick or it's something where you could trap your foot, it's not safe. The players shouldn't play. I do feel bad for all the fans who did travel out. NFL tried to make it right with all the different various things that they did yesterday with the players and whatnot, and also saying they would refund some fans money. And that's probably somewhat of a consolation. I'm sure other people are still disappointed, but I'm not exactly sure what you could be disappointed in. You weren't going to see Aaron Rodgers out there, or Andrew Luck, or any of the named players are going to play barely in the preseason at all, let alone a fifth preseason game. And as Charlie Casserly was saying on NFL Network, he was mentioning that those teams do get like an additional week of practice since they're participating in this game. So these teams still make out on the back end because they get an additional week's worth of drills and going and doing everything on the field, as opposed to the other teams that must wait. So they do have a head start in that regard, even if they do miss out on this game. This game really just hurts some of these players on the 90-man roster that may not otherwise get in the game. They're talking about maybe one of the quarterbacks who was looking to start yesterday. He may not have another opportunity in the future. We don't know for sure. Probably had family there, was probably real excited to put on an NFL jersey, and everybody at home, anybody that knows him, rooting for him, and that opportunity's lost and gone forever. And I really do feel for those type of guys who are fighting for a job that need as much time as possible for everyone to see what they can do. Because as we all know, and the whipping boy with the Pittsburgh Steelers, of course, is Landry Jones. But Landry Jones got to play an awful lot in the preseason last year, and I think that really helped for the few times he had to come in for relief. No matter how you feel about him He did get the job done in some circumstances last year, and if he doesn't get all of those reps, including that extra game, and some of it was some luck, just unfortunate luck for Bruce Gradkowski, who had suffered the injury, that Landry Jones got even more of the timeshare until Michael Vick came aboard last year. But that extra time does help those players, helps those players mature, gives them some real game type of experience to show in front of the coaching staff and show what they can get done. But with that set aside, we still have several days until we get some real football with some of the other games kicking off, including the Steelers on Friday. We'll be playing at home. They play at Heinz Field with the Detroit Lions, who are visiting in town, doing some joint practices throughout the week at St. Vincent College before the game that will kick off Friday night in downtown Pittsburgh. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to see several of these players in the preseason. A lot of people do dismiss the preseason games. The scores don't mean anything to me. It means more to me to see some of these guys get on the field, and I want to see what they can do. And there's going to be an entire show dedicated to this later this week as a preview for the Steelers and Lions preseason game number 1 of the 2016 season, 1 of 4 in the preseason that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be playing. So if there is one player that you are excited to see, I'd like to hear who it is. I'd like you to tell us why it is you want to see them and what you would expect to see. And you can do that, of course, by calling into our hotline, the Steel City Underground hotline at 203-900-4SCU. Again, that number, if you need it, is 203-900-4728. Looking forward to taking your calls. Hope to have a roundtable discussion on that, actually, because I'm just biting my tongue on a few of the guys I want to see. I'm going to wait to see what goes on in camp this week before I make my final verdict on some of the players, but would love to hear your comments because, like I said, I know who I'm looking forward to seeing. So, Hall of Fame game didn't happen, but the Hall of Fame did happen, and Kevin Greene, of course, getting enshrined and all the various activities that happened, including, if you missed some of this, on SteelCityUnderground.com and, of course, Facebook.com/SteelCityUnderground and, of course, Steel City Underground on Twitter, all the various social media, had some videos and photography that were exclusive to Steel City Underground with Kevin Greene, the gold jacket ceremony on Thursday, of course, the parade in Canton on Saturday morning. If you didn't get to see any of that, head on over. There's also some other stuff that's going up periodically throughout the week. Had a really, really, really cool highlight video congratulating Kevin Greene. If you missed that on Sunday, I think there was something like 20,000 people that saw that video throughout the weekend, and I'll tell you what, I could watch it over and over and over. Kevin Greene, what an intense guy, what an intense speech if you happen to miss it. Here's what he had to say about Steelers Nation as he gave every single team props in his interview, but this is specifically what Kevin Greene had to say about his time with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Playing in front of the Steeler Nation and feeding off that energy from those fans, I believed in my heart that I was unblockable, and it was a phenomenal experience.
And Kevin, I am with you on that. I mean, that's just talking about a guy who feeds off the energy of the crowd. What else could give you adrenaline? If these guys played in an empty stadium, I wonder if they would still be hyped up just as much. We live just as vicariously through you, Kevin, and I'm glad that it's a two-way revolving door where the fans feed off the players and the players feed off the fans. It's just so cool to hear. Kevin Greene, of course, just to run by some of his accolades and some of the things that he had done personally in the NFL. It was long overdue for Kevin Greene to be named to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He retired and was currently still the third-time sack leader in the NFL with 160 sacks, only behind Bruce Smith and Reggie White. Of course, Kevin Greene's 160 sacks, a record for a linebacker, the most ever by a linebacker. So that means he's ahead of even players such as Lawrence Taylor, Derek Thomas, Andre Tippett. Greene is only one of 4 players in the NFL to lead in sacks in multiple seasons. He led in 1994 with the Pittsburgh Steelers and then again in 96 with the Carolina Panthers. He's also tied for second in career safeties with 3 and third all-time in fumble recoveries with 26. During his career, Greene recorded 5 interceptions, and he is one of 3 players to record 10 or more sacks in at least 10 different seasons. So he had an average of 10 sacks a year for 15 seasons in the NFL. That's just absolutely incredible. 228 games played in his 15-year career. 8 times he was among the NFL's top 10 sackers. And, of course, like I mentioned, he led the NFL twice, named to the Pro Bowl 5 times, and 11 times of those 15 years he led his team, the team he played for, in sacks. So he also, Kevin Greene, played in 6 conference championships. And, of course, now he gets to add his bust to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton. More than well-deserved for Kevin Greene, but there was another question because Kevin Greene, having played for the handful of teams he did originally, the Los Angeles Rams before he headed to Pittsburgh, was a Steeler for several years, went to the Carolina Panthers, left for the 49ers, and then came back and finished his career with the Carolina Panthers. And then, of course, how apropos with all the tie-ins with the Green Bay Packers and Indianapolis Colts this weekend, Kevin Greene was also the linebackers coach under Dom Capers, who was the defensive coordinator with the Green Bay Packers. So that's how that gets tied back into the Cheeseheads. Of course, you know, Kevin Greene played under Dom Capers. Well, Dom was the defensive coordinator with the Pittsburgh Steelers and also a head coach with the Carolina Panthers. So I've been asked this as part of Kevin Greene going into the Hall of Fame, and a lot of people, they kind of like side with him being a Steeler. Panthers fans remember him as a Panther. He was great for every team that he played with, as the aforementioned stats speak for themselves. And somebody had asked, how many Pittsburgh Steelers are in the Hall of Fame? Well, this is kind of a subjective question because if you were to visit the Pro Football Hall of Fame and see their selection process, and I'm going to read this verbatim from ProFootballHof.com, the official site of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, is a new Hall of Fame member enshrined as a member of a team. And it goes on, obviously teams take great pride in the accomplishments of individuals who have been a part of their organization. Often individual teams and even the Hall of Fame will list enshrinees according to the team or teams on which they spent a significant period of time. An enshrinee, however, is not asked to declare, nor does the Hall of Fame choose a team under which a new member is enshrined. When elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, an individual is recognized for his accomplishments as a player, a coach, or contributor. So, to answer the question as to how many Pittsburgh Steelers are in the Hall of Fame, I have to go and kick this over to Bob Labriola, who runs a session over on Steelers.com called Asked and Answered, and this was a question that came up a little while ago that I made sure to take a footnote of, so I can't take credit for this answer necessarily, but Bob says the Pro Football Hall of Fame does keep a tally on this, and the criteria it uses in keeping score has to do with the number of Hall of Famers who made the major part of their primary contribution for any one club. Based on that, the Steelers are third all-time with 21 enshrinees in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, behind only 2 teams, being the Chicago Bears with 27 and the Green Bay Packers with 24. So right behind the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New York Giants and Washington Redskins are tied, each with 19 enshrinees. The Cleveland, Los Angeles / St. Louis / Los Angeles Rams with 17, the Oakland Los Angeles Raiders with 16, and the Dallas Cowboys and San Francisco 49ers have 15 apiece as well. So the answer to how many Pittsburgh Steelers are in the Hall of Fame, based on the primary contributions with only the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Pro Football Hall of Fame recognizes 21 members of the Hall as being members of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there is your question. I've seen and your answer, and I've seen so many different numbers floating around, 27, 28, 30, 14. I mean, so this is the official word from the Pro Football Hall of Fame via Bob Labriola. 21, the official answer there of Pittsburgh Steelers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, Kevin Greene, of course, being the 21st. Wow, Kevin Greene, what an intense guy. I absolutely love it. The guy was so intense. It was one of those guys that I really latched on to. I was younger growing up with those Bill Cowher teams, those Blitzburg defenses, and seeing him go in was just really cool. And the guy's just infectious. If you listen to his speech, if you didn't, you have to listen to it. It was spot on. It was great. He gave credit to every single person he possibly could give credit to. He was concise. He was on point, and he just has that ability to capture you through the television. I mean, it just was absolutely awesome. So, but some more news, some more things to get excited about. One of those things is the segueing from Hall of Fame game, the Hall of Fame weekend. The Bud Light Series cans are out with the Pittsburgh Steelers logo on them. Yeah, it's kind of a hodgepodge episode. I went from Hall of Fame and to Bud Light, something that the official beer sponsor, sometimes people call it water. I'm not saying that, but it's something that's there if you want to drink it. But the cans are really awesome. I got my hands on them. A lot of people have been asking me after posting the picture over on Facebook and Twitter, like, Joe, where did you get these things? How can I ship them to you, etc., etc.? Well, here's some answers for you. Number one, unfortunately, the cans only appear to be sold in specific regions. Now, don't take this as gospel. You may find them somewhere else, but as far as I know, they're only distributed to the areas for which those teams, almost like where they have the TV broadcast rights. So Western Pennsylvania for sure. I haven't been down into like the West Virginia Panhandle into any areas like that to be able to tell you if they're available there, but definitely Western Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania has some strange beer laws I'll cover in a second. But when I went on a scavenger hunt for these things last year, unavailable anywhere in Northeast Ohio. I could tell most of you fans that. Most of you who know me and know that I actually do live in Northeast Ohio, just under an hour away from Pittsburgh. You're only going to get Cleveland Browns cans if you go into any convenience store, anywhere where beer is sold. Only the Brownies in Northeast Ohio, and I'm not sure if any of the cans are available, let's say, in Maryland or West Virginia. It may be one of these things that are dictated by crazy beer laws. For those of you who are into craft beer and know about shipping beer and distributing beer, and it's really wild. For the longest time, Yuengling, which was very popular in Pennsylvania, very popular in other areas too, like down in Florida. I remember seeing one of the plants down in Tampa many, many years ago, and before we had craft beer, Yuengling was like one of the better things you could get. Of course, Sam Adams being in that same category. For those of you who are the beer drinkers or connoisseurs, that is. Very exciting to be able to get it here in Ohio finally several years ago. In fact, when I was married back in, let me see, wife will kill me if I don't know the actual date, right? 2010. I know the day, by the way. It was May 8th, 2010. And Yuengling was not available in Ohio, but luckily being close to the state line, like I said, and living close to Pennsylvania and not too far from Pittsburgh itself, I was able to just go to a beer distributor. Now, you can't go into Pennsylvania and physically buy beer in a grocery store. Some stores, yes, it's starting to change. And the way to get around that is, I guess, you could buy beer at a bar. And you could just go in, buy a six-pack, leave straight from a bar. But for the most part, you do have to buy from a beer distributor. There are certain grocery stores that have a cafe in them that kind of skirt-tail that. They do growlers and they have some draft beer and stuff. And I think that's how they kind of get around it, is there's somewhat a bar with a beer store, and they're kind of sectioned off a little bit from the grocery store itself, just like a little cafe area. And I've seen some of that, and those are starting to come around a little bit more as the laws start to get relaxed in Pennsylvania. But to physically be able to go and to any grocery store or gas station, for example, and buy beer. It's not going to happen in Pennsylvania. You have to find a beer distributor. Some of them are open really strange hours. There's only certain times a day. Like I think even if you go to a Steelers game, they don't serve beer until 11 a.m., even if you're like at the casino, for example. So that took me by surprise. So that's one reason why you always want to bring beer with you to tailgate if you end up at Heinz Field. Actually, and that was several years ago too, so don't take my word for it, because all I do now is tailgate because of that one bad incident. Some of this stuff is becoming more relaxed as I think just the craft beer thing's kind of taking its wave and getting some laws changed. So we're talking about beer an awful lot, I know, but these things are very important because I know some people have asked if I could ship cans to, let's say, California, for example, or get me. First of all, when you buy this from a beer distributor, they're selling it in bulk. It's like going into a Costco or a Sam's Club, and you have to buy a pack of 30 for whatever godforsaken reason in Pennsylvania. You can't get anything smaller than a 30-pack of these Steelers cans, even though they sell Bud Light in some smaller denominations. Maybe like a 24-pack, for example. You have to get the 30-pack case in order to get the Steelers cans in these distributorships. So that turns out okay when you go and you tailgate for all these games, and you could probably go through all of them in a season, and I'd probably give a few out to different friends and family members and people who collect these sorts of things. In fact, I have an uncle who has over 5,000 domestic beer cans, so it's a huge collection, and he's got all the different NFL cans. One really cool thing is he was able to get 4 of the prototypes before the Super Bowl, and they had the Super Bowl champions, but they only made it for the AFC and NFC conference championship teams. So it would have been like the Patriots, the Broncos, the Carolina Panthers, and the Arizona Cardinals. So they made a prototype of each of them, and he actually has it, which is really cool. So even getting back to the Yuengling thing for a second, Yuengling wasn't available in outside of or in Ohio at the time. So in order to get it and have it for my wedding, we had to cross the state line, buy it, and bring it back over, which I'm pretty sure may have even still can't be illegal because we bought it ourselves and consumed it and didn't actually try to sell it. So the main point here being, the only thing you can buy is a giant case of 30 cans from a beer distributor in Western Pennsylvania, because I'm assuming in Eastern Pennsylvania you're probably going to get the Philadelphia Eagles. And there's no way to ship that. And if you try to ship that, it is illegal because of all these various boundaries and laws to which alcohol and beer distributorship is set up, and you are not permitted. I looked, United States Postal Service, obviously a government entity, they say no. UPS said no. FedEx says no. So I apologize if anybody, there may be some way that you might be able to find friends or family that can do it for you. Just don't say that you're transporting liquid or beer, or pack them up real good. Or if you know somebody that's a collector like the uncle I was talking about, and they put a nice little hole in the bottom so you could still keep it as a collector piece, empty it out, package it up real nice so it doesn't get crushed by these people who just throw your packages around like it's nothing. They toss it around like the pigskin themselves. There you go. There you have it, folks. It's very difficult. So unless you plan on making a very special trip out to the Berg, it's going to be tough to get your hands on these Steeler cans. But I am very excited because I did get my hand on some of them. And I think that for the most part, these are probably around maybe through probably part of the fall, and then I think they just kind of stop the production of them. So if you do to come out this way, you're going to want to come out this way and get them, I won't say as soon as possible, because I think they're pretty much in production. I even still see the 4th of July ones out there, but of course the 4th of July ones, people aren't going out and buying 4th of July cans unless you're really collecting them or you just want to drink on the cheap. So there you have it with the Bud Light cans. The rest of this week in the episodes I hope to produce for everybody here with the Steel City Underground podcast. As you know, this is kind of all over the place. Another one of these no agenda shows. I'm going to be talking about training camp and there's not a lot of stuff going on over the weekend. It was exciting to see the Friday Night Lights thing. If you didn't catch, ESPN was at Latrobe. They got to catch the Steelers night practice. That's the yearly tradition there. And then there was a whole bunch of stories that come out of all of that. And one of them was, one was Tyler Matakevich and how he was just destroying people like at the Friday Night Lights, I guess. And then throughout the weekend, they're talking about him using spin moves and everything on everyone. And for those that are unfamiliar, Tyler Matakevich, Bronco Nagurski Award winner in college, comes from Temple, had 4 seasons in college with at least 100 tackles or more. The guy's a tackling machine, 7th round draft choice. Long shot maybe to make this roster with all the talent at linebacker, but he's certainly making his case, as are a number of other players. The Steelers, unfortunately, one of the guys I was high on, Shaquem Phillips, injured, released by the team. Probably will not have an opportunity to battle in the wide receiver competition there. And Kenan Severin also released. So it looks like it's down to maybe DeMarcus Ayers and Eli Rogers. The Steelers also brought another tight end aboard. I don't have his name handy, unfortunately. And a few other small roster moves due to various injuries and movement. And, of course, the Senquez Golson whole situation that's going on there, and Kevin White Jr. being signed as, well, at least another body that's going to be there at camp for the time being. But aside from the training camp divas and one of the stories that comes out of Friday Night Lights and has been going around for seemingly the start of training camp, is how Ben Roethlisberger has been very open about the Steelers going for 2-point conversions instead of the point after a touchdown. I always wonder what Chris Boswell thought about this. And honestly, this is going to be maybe part of a larger series. There will be an article with Ron Lippock from Pittsburgh Sports Daily Bulletin, and he will be talking about various innovations that the Steelers have brought to the NFL, or how they've been innovators overall. So look for that later this week. And of course, if I could get Ron on the show, we're going to discuss that as well. But as part of the beginning of this whole innovation series, just in short, there isn't really a whole lot to talk about the 2-point conversion thing by itself. So I thought I would toss it in to this particular episode of the Steel City Underground podcast, because the Steelers, in every practice at training camp, they have this drill that they call 7 shots. And what they do is they have 7 consecutive plays that start at the 2-yard line, just like a 2-point conversion. And they're on the goal line, 11 on 11. And they have the offense and defense there. And what they're trying to do is they're working on the 2-point conversions after touchdowns. Now, last year, the Steelers went for almost twice as many 2-point conversions as any NFL team, and they converted 8 of them, which was good for 73% success rate. So, considering Mike Tomlin and the gambles that he likes to take, I was just telling somebody when I'm talking about Landry Jones and defending him even earlier in this own show, I was talking about in the Seahawks game how Mike Tomlin went for that one just fake play, and Landry Jones throws the pick, and it was one of the ugliest things. It was just terribly executed by everyone that was involved in the play. But this is Mike Tomlin. He's got his pedal. He's got the pedal to the metal. He's got his foot on the gas, and he's just going to go. And that's the way he is. He makes the gutsy calls. We saw that in the playoffs as well against the Cincinnati Bengals. And, of course, that could have backfired badly with the Steelers in that whole game, and how the Bengals actually ended up coming back and they take like a 1-point lead with just, what was it, maybe just after the 2-minute warning, if I recall correctly. So it was just Mike Tomlin is gutsy, and I think the Steelers are always looking for a way to innovate. We see they have robots, that they're using these tackling robots now. It's like another thing that they're adding on here. And I do believe that there are more things to look at from a historical perspective, and even going forward with some of the special teams, which will be another show coming up. So if anyone has any questions on the specific innovations, or of course the players that you want to see in the first preseason game and the people that you're geeked up, don't forget to call the hotline 203-900-4SCU. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, the whole 2-point conversion thing, I'm not really sure. They moved the ball back, and now it's like a permanent deal. Chris Boswell has a pretty strong leg on him. Steelers want to outscore opponents. They want to score 30 points a game. I don't know if it's some bravado or if it's something they're going to actually do. And we even saw, what was it, when this 2-point conversion thing was becoming popular, the New York Jets with Tim Tebow, and that was supposed to be a thing, and that never materialized. And it's just, I don't know if it's just this preseason stuff where we're reaching for things to talk about. Obviously, we're always reaching for things to talk about. I had to throw a few things just in here to fill one. So I don't know. Does the 2-point conversion thing really, does it happen? It could. I just hate to see if you're in a real tight game. I would hope Mike Tomlin, he gets criticized sometimes. He gets criticized for time management. But he's really in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. He looks like a genius when things work. He looks like a fool when it doesn't work. And that's why he gets paid the big bucks. So I guess we'll see. He certainly has the personnel to do it. We'll see if it ends up working out for him. But until next time, folks, I hope you're geared up, geeked up, and ready for football. Don't forget, too, we have the Steel City Underground preseason welcome guide. Been trying to make some updates with that, with some of the roster changes and whatnot. Bear with me. I got one more roster update to make, but it was updated on last Friday, so it's almost current. They did make some changes over the weekend, as noted, but you can get that for free if you haven't already, the free ebook, 2016 preseason welcome guide at steelcityunderground.com/preseason. And if you already have that, you've read through it, cool. Until next time, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.